You pull into the parking lot in your four-door sedan. Nothing special. Gray. The kind of car nobody looks at twice. You lock it and walk inside, and for a split second, you wonder if you made a wrong turn somewhere. Because last night you saw it again, another picture of someone you went to school with, standing in front of a fountain in Rome, sipping something cold, looking like they've cracked a code you're still trying to find. You think about your own bank account, the transfers you schedule every month, the nights you stayed in instead of going out, the vacations you postponed, and a quiet question starts to form in the back of your mind. Am I even winning? Here's what nobody tells you. The people who are actually winning the money game, truly, permanently, quietly winning, almost never look like it. And the ones who look like they're winning, most of them are running a deficit behind a beautiful filter. The game has been sold to you backwards, and almost everyone around you has bought it. What you're about to hear isn't a pep talk. It's not a list of affirmations. It's a set of 5 quiet, almost invisible signs that, if they apply to you, mean you've already done something most people spend their entire lives trying and failing to do. And if they don't apply to you yet, then at least you'll know exactly what direction to face. Let's start with the one that's hardest to see from the outside. The first sign is that your money moves without you. Not automatically in a vague sense. Automatically in the literal sense. Every month, before you have a chance to feel the money, before your brain registers it as available, it is already gone. Into an index fund, into a brokerage account, into a retirement vehicle, into a high-yield account you almost never open. You set it up once, maybe twice, and then you left it alone. This is not glamorous. There's no moment to take a picture of. There's no notification that feels satisfying. You don't get to walk into a dealership and point at something shiny and say, I earned this. What you get instead is a number that grows slowly, almost invisibly, in the background of your life, the way a tree grows in a yard. You don't watch it. You just look up one day and there's shade where there wasn't shade before. The financially fragile person, the one who looks rich, does the opposite. They see the paycheck. They feel it. They spend it while the feeling is still warm. Then, if anything is left over, maybe it gets saved. Usually nothing is left over. If your savings and investments are funded before your lifestyle gets a vote, you have already won an argument that most adults lose every single month for their entire working life. That argument is between present you and future you. And in your case, future you is winning. The second sign is that you pay for time without feeling guilty about it. This one takes a while to understand because the culture around money, especially old money wisdom, says that every expense you can avoid, you should avoid. Frugality as discipline. Cutting as virtue. And in the early stages of building wealth, that thinking has its place. You cannot invest money you've already spent. But there's a specific kind of spending that separates the people who are building something permanent from the people who are just hoarding, and that's the willingness to trade money for time when the trade makes sense. Not recklessly, not lavishly, strategically. The person who is genuinely winning doesn't mow their own lawn when they earn more per hour than a lawn service costs. They don't spend 45 minutes in traffic to save $3 on parking. They don't spend a Saturday assembling flat-pack furniture when they could pay someone $80 and spend that Saturday with their kids, or resting, or doing something that actually generates income or joy. This is not laziness. This is the beginning of a fundamental shift in how you think about your most finite resource. You have no idea how many hours you have left. Neither do I. Neither does anyone. But the person who has figured out money understands that hours are the actual currency. That money is just the tool you use to buy them back. When you stop measuring your worth in possessions and start measuring it in hours reclaimed, something changes in how you make decisions. You stop buying things to signal status. You start buying time to protect your life. If you're already doing this, even in small ways, you are ahead of where most people will ever get. The third sign is that you are genuinely, deeply bored by your own portfolio. Not confused, not overwhelmed, not afraid to look at it. Bored. Because the loudest voices in personal finance want you to believe that wealth is exciting, that you should be trading, timing, rotating, moving in and out of sectors, watching every tick. There is an entire industry built on keeping you stimulated, because a stimulated investor is an active investor, and an active investor generates fees. The actual formula for building wealth over time is so straightforward that it barely qualifies as advice. Buy broad, low-cost index funds, add to them consistently regardless of what the market is doing, and wait. That's it. Everything else is entertainment dressed up as strategy. The person who has won the money game checks their portfolio infrequently. When the market drops, and it will drop, it always drops, they do not panic sell. They do not call anyone. They do not lose sleep, because they understand something that took most people decades to learn. A loss is only a loss when you sell. Paper fluctuations are noise. Time is the actual variable that matters. Boring is not a failure of ambition. Boring in investing is a methodology. If your investment strategy could be explained to a 12-year-old in under 3 minutes and it hasn't changed in the last 5 years, that is not a sign that you don't know what you're doing. That is the sign that you do. The fourth sign is that you've stopped comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. This is the one that hurts, because the comparison trap isn't really about money. It's about time. It's about the specific and brutal unfairness of seeing someone's outcome without seeing their timeline. The person posting pictures from the Amalfi Coast might be 44 years old, 20 years into a career, with a paid-off house and a portfolio that has been compounding quietly since they were in their mid-20s. Or they might be 31 and in debt up to their eyebrows, using their last available credit to fund a trip they cannot afford because the discomfort of not looking successful has become more unbearable than the interest rate. You have no way of knowing which one it is just by looking. And here is the uncomfortable truth: it doesn't matter. Because neither version of their story is your story. Your story has a different timeline, different starting conditions, different obligations, different setbacks, and different advantages. And the moment you stop measuring your progress against someone else's visible life, your own progress becomes visible to you for the first time. This is one of the quietest signs of financial maturity that exists. You don't need to perform wealth. You don't need to signal it. You are not building a brand. You are building a life. And those two things, building a brand versus building a life, require completely opposite decisions almost every single time. When you're no longer running someone else's race, you start running the only race that was ever actually yours to run. And then something strange happens. You start to win it. The fifth sign is the most important one, and it's the one that almost nobody talks about. The fifth sign is that you can afford a bad year. Not a bad day, not a bad week, a genuinely bad year, where something goes wrong, really wrong, a job loss, a medical crisis, a business that fails, a relationship that ends and restructures everything, and you don't collapse. You don't have to make desperate decisions. You don't have to borrow from people who love you. You don't have to sell something you built. You bend, and you don't break. This is what financial security actually is. Not a specific number, not a car, not a square footage. The ability to absorb a catastrophic event and remain standing. The ability to say no to a job you hate because you have enough runway to find one you don't. The ability to leave a situation that's toxic without the exit being blocked by financial panic. Most people live so close to the edge of their income that a single unexpected bill, a few $1,000s, sometimes less, creates a crisis. Not because they're irresponsible, necessarily, but because the system they're operating inside of has been designed to keep them there. Lifestyle inflation is not an accident. Convenience consumption is not an accident. The pressure to look successful is not an accident. It all serves the same function: to keep money moving out of your hands and into someone else's. The person who has won the money game has a different relationship with this edge. They don't live on it. They live back from it, with a buffer that took years to build and that they guard quietly and deliberately. This buffer is not flashy. You cannot show it off at a dinner party. You cannot park it outside so the neighbors see it. It is completely invisible to the outside world. It is also the thing that makes every other part of your life feel fundamentally different. Security is not the same as wealth, but security is the foundation that wealth is built on. And the person who has security, who truly cannot be financially wiped out by a single bad event, has something that a person with a luxury car lease and an empty savings account will never have, no matter how good that car looks in photographs. Now, here is the part you need to sit with. Maybe you read those 5 signs and recognize yourself in some of them, but not all. Maybe you nodded at the automated savings and the boring portfolio, but you still check what other people are doing and feel the familiar pull of inadequacy. Maybe you've started paying for convenience, but you haven't quite built the buffer. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, past the beginning, not yet at the end. That's not failure. That is exactly where most thoughtful people are when they start to understand what they're actually building. The mistake isn't being in the middle. The mistake is thinking the middle means you're losing. You're not losing. You're building. And building is slow by design, because anything built fast can be dismantled just as quickly. The trap the financial industry sets, and that the culture reinforces, is convincing you that wealth should be visible, that success should be noisy, that if you haven't arrived somewhere that looks impressive to other people, you haven't arrived. But the people who built real, lasting, generational financial security almost universally describe the same experience. A quiet life, a long time, a series of boring decisions that compounded into something nobody saw coming. You're not behind because you drive a modest car. You are not failing because you didn't take the European vacation. You are not losing because you can't point to something shiny and say this is what I have to show for it. What you have to show for it might be something you can't photograph. A growing account, a vanishing debt, an emergency fund that is getting less of an emergency every month. A future self who is going to have options that your present self is quietly, patiently, unglamorously creating right now. Here is the real definition of winning the money game. It is not a number. It is not a neighborhood. It is not a passport full of stamps or a closet full of things. It is the moment when the decisions you make with money are no longer driven by fear or ego or the need to match what someone else is doing. It is the moment when you use money the way it was always meant to be used, as a tool. For time, for options, for the freedom to live the specific life that is actually yours, not a louder, shinier version of someone else's. That moment is not as far away as the comparison makes it feel. In a sedan in the parking lot, the unremarkable, sensible, paid-off sedan that nobody takes a picture of might just be the quietest sign that you're closer than you think.